The thick air of Veltrim Hollow clung to Philip's skin like a second layer of clothing. It was a peculiar place that felt ancient, almost as if the skyline of barren trees and mossy stones had been frozen in time. The sun hung unnaturally low in the sky, its light muted and pallid. Shadows bent and twisted at odd angles, as though the landscape were contorting to escape from the heavy drapery of its own history. Philip had ventured there with a sense of purpose, spurred on by local legends whispered in dimly lit taverns, the tales of the whispering stones that lay hidden beyond the ridge, reputed to be cursed by long-forgotten rites. The closer he crept toward the ridge, the more pervasive the unease settled within him. The woods were uncharacteristically silent. Even the rustle of leaves seemed to fade into stillness, as though nature itself held its breath. The light gradually dimmed, and for every step he took, the ground beneath him oxidized into a decaying mosaic of colors, grays, greens, and browns, that reminded him of old memories he didn't want to confront. Hadn't he visited this place before? It was difficult to recall. A knot in his gut twisted tighter with every footfall. Upon reaching the stones, a curtain of inexplicable dread enveloped Philip, and his breath caught in his throat. Uneven boulders jutted from the earth like twisted teeth, their surfaces covered with clusters of dark, moist moss that seemed to pulsate, absorbing the light. The whispers began softly, a distant murmur just beyond the threshold of comprehension, playing tricks on his senses. He blinked hard and could have sworn the stones were humming in unison, a low and almost comforting drone that turned his thoughts inward, pulling at threads of memories he never knew he had. But as he lingered, the whispers grew more insistent, more confounding. They coalesced into words, names, dates, phrases from his childhood that seemed to mingle with the malignancy of ancient chants. Philip crouched, scraping away moss with trembling hands to reveal carvings etched in a language long lost to man. The glyphs twisted and spiraled, losing meaning the longer he looked at them, seeming to shift before his eyes. He should have felt fear, and yet an inexplicable longing beckoned him to press deeper. Something glimmered under the stones, an object like no other, small and irregular, radiating a sickly luminescence. As he reached for it, his heart drummed in his chest, a frenzied rhythm that drowned out the whispers. It was a medallion, carved with the same strange symbols that flickered around him, inscribed with a tactile chill that resonated through his fingertips. The moment he grasped it, the air around him thickened, swirling into a haze of shimmering colors. The forest warped, floors transforming into ceilings, bark morphing into skin, everything in flux, as though the very essence of reality was unraveling. A strange consciousness enveloped him, slipping needles of fear through the seams of his mind. He was acutely aware that he'd become unmoored from time, bleeding into a dimension where reason itself was a wraith. Shadows elongated and contracted in ways that teased the boundaries of sanity, twisting Philip into an echo of himself. He had read of time anomalies in dusty tomes, but this was unlike any theoretical construct. It felt alive. Panic gripped him as he stumbled away from the stones. Fragments of thought, memories of childhood, siblings, parents, merged with phantoms of the distant past, intertwining. Faces he didn't recognize swam into view, eyes that bore the weight of ages, mouths moving to soundless echoes, urging him to remember what had been lost, what was both ancient and new. Within this maelstrom of recollections lay a harsh reality. He was not the first to traverse the hollow, and neither would he be the last. Night crept upon him unyieldingly, a tide that swelled, enveloping the landscape and erasing clear distinctions between shadow and substance. With each passing moment, the whispers intensified, metamorphosing into a crescendo of despair. The medallion burned in his pocket, a steady reminder of the precipice he was teetering upon. Darkness coalesced into shapes around him, figures indistinct yet intimate, faces marked with an understanding that transcended human cognition. He could hear them, those who had been claimed by Veltrim Hollow, each a piece of a broken tapestry woven with loss and lingering sorrow. Their voices fused into a single cacophony of longing, reverberating through the very marrow of his bones. "Stay," they seemed to whisper. "Stay and be one of us." Philip turned and ran, heart pounding, each footfall a defiance against the calls of those who sought his surrender. He felt as if the environment had shifted, bending and twisting around him, conspiring to merge him with the stones. He stumbled into the woods, only to find paths looping back upon themselves, moments collapsing into one another. Desperation gnawed at him. Each step only became another tether into the phantom embrace of the hollow. At last, as the lunar gleam pierced the canopy in fleeting shards, he glimpsed an ephemeral figure standing at the threshold between the stones, its outline flickering as if woven from the fabric of dreams. Its eyes gleamed with the unspoken promise of knowledge that no mortal could bear. Philip's mind fractured as the realization washed over him. This was not merely an encounter, it was a reckoning. Time pressed heavily against him, throttling and stretching the essence of his being until comprehension buckled under the weight of the unknown. And then, as fleeting as a breath on glass, the luminosity dimmed, and he found himself standing alone in the hollow night, the medallion still pulsating in his grasp. The shadows receded, but something inside him snapped. He had glimpsed the vastness of existence beyond the veil, and in that brief moment, he knew he could never return to the ordinary. Returning to the familiarity of civilized life seemed an exercise in futile normals. Friends spoke to him, laughter rang brightly around him, but somewhere between the walls of their reality and the vast unknown, he stood utterly alone. The burden of understanding estranged him from those who could not see. The shadow of the hollow loomed over him, whispering a promised eternity fraught with torment and ecstasy alike. Ever present, its silent echo followed him into night, beckoning him back, crafting a frayed connection that would never truly sever. He was merely a fragment of an echo, lost within the disquiet of time's grasp.